What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Powerhouse Mentality Podcast. I am your host. I am Caitlin Kenneth Smith. Please don't turn off the podcast. Don't worry. I will not be recording an episode today for obvious reasons, but I'm just giving you guys an intro, and I wanted to make sure I got something valuable out to you guys for the time being until my voice decides to cooperate again. So in this episode, I'm going to be sharing one of our bi-weekly Q&As that myself, Coach Justin, and Coach Eric host in the Hidden Summit Facebook community. It's free if you're in the Facebook group, and the Facebook group is fucking free. You guys hear a lot from me, so I wanted to throw something at you that has a couple different viewpoints from some of our other coaches. And like I said, if you want access to these Q&As, please go down to the show notes below and join the free Hidden Summit Facebook group. I'll leave it there. You guys enjoy this one and make today the fucking best day you possibly can. We got 7 questions here that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to give you guys the opportunity, if anything comes up on your mind, for you to raise your hands and ask questions additionally. So I'll start by saying what the question was, and then we'll kind of go around the horn. We'll all give our opinions on it, and hopefully you guys can get a couple of different things from each one of us. So the first question is, I find it difficult at times to eat enough throughout the day when I feel overwhelmed, when I see I haven't hit my macros. So the biggest piece of advice that I have on that one is pre-tracking. So all of us at some point in the day are on our phones. I know it. You're scrolling through your phone, whether it be when you're eating a meal or whether it be when you're sitting on the couch at night. So that's the perfect opportunity for you to take 5 to 15 minutes, depending on kind of where you're at in your journey, to plan out the following day. And if you have to do it in the morning for that day, that's fine. But if you're going to prioritize this journey, then you have to take time to be able to pre-track your macros if you find that you're not hitting them throughout the day. And it's going to make it way easier to do it that way. So that's what I recommend. Eric, Justin, what do you guys got?
Yeah, for me personally too, it comes down to that pre-tracking method that you talked about, where, if I can stay ahead, I'm going to be ahead. So if I know something's coming up, it's in my power to take 10 minutes each day to make sure I'm pre-planning for what's coming. So on my side, I can't really argue any different with what you said, Caitlin.
Nice. Yeah, I'd reflect pretty much the same. I mean, I think it just comes down to looking at your day as like something that you need to be fueled for, right? Kind of like a workout, but looking at it in part and parcel, throughout the day, and be like, okay, well, what am I going to need to make it through this segment of my day, this segment of the day, this segment of my day, like whether that be things you need to have with you or things you need to have prepared ahead of time. So yeah, track it, but also think of it as, what am I going to need to be ready for? Maybe a helpful mindset to have as well.
Mm-hmm. Perspective is important there. And then also understanding that, like, hey, sometimes your plan that you pre-tracked isn't going to work out, but it's much easier for you to adapt and pivot from something that you already have set in stone than kind of just pull stuff out of thin air. So pre-tracking clearly seems to be the method that you could go to for that. So second question is, any behavior modification tips? So behaviors are tough. So the biggest thing you want to do here with behaviors is you want to focus on small incremental changes at a time. So an example of this would be, if you're waking up at 7 a.m. right now and you want to wake up at 5:30 a.m., it wouldn't be the most efficient thing for you to just say, okay, cool, I'm just going to wake up 90 minutes earlier now every day, because it's probably not going to be something that you can actually sustain. You're probably going to feel like shit. But if you do it within 15-minute increments, so you do 1 month where you just wake up 15 minutes earlier, you're barely going to feel that. 15 minutes of less sleep, you're not going to feel it as heavily as 90 minutes. So then you do that every month for a couple months, and all of a sudden, look at you're waking up at 5:30 and you're doing what you said you were going to do. So it's the same thing when you're trying to modify any behavior, small incremental changes, but then also thinking about what James Clear spoke about in the book, Atomic Habits. So if you guys have not read Atomic Habits, I highly recommend reading that. He talks about the 4 laws of behavioral change: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. So when you're trying to change a behavior, you want to make the new behavior obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, because you're more likely to do it. Do you guys have anything to go off of that?
For me personally, when it comes down to like behavior modification and tips and things like that, for me, like it says in the Atomic Habits, like making it obvious and making it look attractive. So if I can tell myself that, hey, if I start to do this, then it's going to lead to this. So for me personally, it's easier to make like a more drastic switch and not incrementally do things. But if I know like, hey, if I really, really dive into this and I start to handle my business in this way, it's going to lead to this result. So why would I want to delay what I want when I can change now to further that needle just a little bit forward? But everyone does things slightly different. So if you're the person that needs a buildup over the cross of 3, 6, 5 days a week, whatever it may be, even a month extended out, then that's on you. Just make sure you're having that conversation with your coach so they can hold you accountable to what you said you're going to do. Whereas for myself personally, like, hey, tomorrow I have to start waking up at X time. Tomorrow I'm going to wake up at X time.
Yeah, and kind of more specifically, to look at the question that was asked, was the struggle was with stress eating specifically. And so modifying behavior around stress eating, or any response to stress at that point, to that degree that you feel like is unhelpful for you. Kind of goes back to a little bit of what I talked about last night on the webinar, which is finding ways to separate yourself from the stimulus of the stress temporarily, right? Just for a small moment, whether that's, some type of writing practice, breathing practice, walking, things like that, anything that can temporarily put it in perspective for you, what the stress is, so that it can change your perspective a little bit. It might not make it easier it might not make it any less difficult to manage, but just providing a little bit of that space to change your direction just momentarily may keep you from making a decision with food that you won't be happy about later, right? So when it comes to stress eating specifically, it could be something like, maybe before, when you feel that pressure or that weight of something coming and you feel like you want to go grab a snack that you feel like it's not going to be helpful. Okay, well, let's try to drink a glass of water first as a kind of a pattern interrupt, and then go from there, right? So it's just bringing some awareness and like calling it out and be like, oh, hold on, I see what's going on here. I'm not really hungry. I just want a snack because somebody just said something ugly to me, whatever, right? Let's go drink a glass of water. Let's go, I don't know, walk for 5 minutes, right? Let's go do 10 push-ups. I don't know, right? Whatever is a pattern interrupt, to be like, oh, okay, well, it wasn't that. Like I wasn't actually looking for food. I was just looking for an escape from the stress. So hopefully that's helpful as a tactic.
Yeah, that's definitely like creating space is definitely one of the biggest things I recommend too. Like, don't tell yourself that you can have the cookies, but then just don't bring them into the house. And so in order to satisfy that craving that you have for stress eating, you have to go to the store and do it. Or like Justin said, 10 push-ups, do a walk. If you can create space, you usually can create awareness and give yourself the opportunity to not do it and find other things to do instead. Cool. I like that one. Next question. We're going to food now, guys. So need good, high protein, low fat, low carb snack ideas that are quick and easy for me on the go. Dairy and gluten-free is a bonus. So deli turkey, beef jerky, beef sticks, Greek yogurt, obviously not dairy-free. Some people with dairy intolerance can handle it. Or you can do dairy-free yogurt. The only problem with dairy-free yogurt is usually it's lower in protein, so you'd have to add a little bit of protein to it. Protein bars or protein powders. Now, they should never be a crutch because we always preach whole food first, except for in the post-workout window, but they can be helpful in certain situations when it's really just not convenient or it's easier for you to stick to that instead of going to something else that would probably not fit your nutrition plan very well. And then you combine those protein sources with fruit, veggies, cheese sticks. You can do rice cakes or nut butters, whatever you need to kind of fill those macros in for that meal or snack. So what about you guys? What are some go-to high protein, low fat, low carb snacks that you go to or recommend to your clients?
Yeah, I'm big on the beef jerky side of things, especially now that there's a lot better quality things that are out there that don't have Like, I don't know if everybody else has ever looked at the back of a like beef jerky label and stuff like that. For some reason, there's always sugar and there's like 7 or 8 grams of carbs in it. There's a company out there called Strive that's air dried beef jerky, and it's literally just protein. And I believe there's like a half a gram of fat per serving, and 1 ounce is 15 grams of protein. So if somebody needed to hit, 30 grams of protein, it needed to keep it under, 5 grams of fat. It's pretty easy to do with that when it's only 2 ounces of that. So, but also another thing I like to look at is like, try not adding it to your day as a snack, but hey, I need this other meal. Like if we can change our verbiage in our head about how we approach our food, typically it's a lot easier to where it's like, I don't need something like quick on the go. Like I'm just filling my day with what I need at the times that I need it. Yes, there are times in your day when you're at your work day where things need to be consumed quicker and easier. But yeah, I'm definitely on board with the beef jerky side of things. Deli meat is something I also, if anybody does get deli meat, I try to tell them make sure to go to your deli counter to get it cut from you, to try to get it as less processed as possible. No one likes slimy meat out of a bag from the cold wall in Walmart. So I definitely would say if we can afford to get it cut off the deli counter, to do that, and then beef jerky side of things is great as well too. Seeds and nuts are a great one too. There's a little bit more fat that's in there, but still something that can fill a gap if we need to, especially if you're trying to feed yourself for a little bit longer. A little bit of extra fat from seeds and nuts can be helpful.
Yeah, again, I just reflecting what y'all said, you're going to be basically looking at lean sources of meat to some degree to try to fill that requirement, right? Low carb, low fat, high protein. But also, like Eric said, I think it is worth challenging the mentality of a snack, because I think when we say the word snack, we don't expect to get full. And when you don't expect to get full, you're searching for more. And what does that do? That leads to a little bit more of a compulsive behavior, so on and so forth, right? And so I prefer to call them small meals or large meals, right? Either have a smaller meal or you have a larger meal. And that's pretty much it, right? Like Eric said, if you're eating enough at your larger kind of set down meals, should you have the opportunity to do that on a regular basis, then it's not likely that you're going to actually physically feel hungry for a snack, right? Or whatever, however you want to think about that. Now I understand we live in a snack culture. I mean, hell, go to a gas station, go to a grocery store. It's on every end cap. It's literally everywhere around you. So don't get me wrong. We all enjoy those things, but it could be helpful if you're struggling with that piece to be like, I can't find something that's like 200 calories but high in protein. It's like, okay, well, what if we just took that same 200 calories, put it into our meal, increased the protein, and made it a little bit more equitable, around the entire plate. So, I love that point.
Yeah, I get that too. I'm the most bro person ever. So it's meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, meal 4, there's no snacks, all meals. Cool. Guys, next question. Ooh, and I know Eric's going to like this one too. So regarding rest days, is it truly just listen to your body, or is there some way to determine if you should utilize a rest day or not? So my thought process behind this, and obviously it's going to be like different scenarios. So like if you're like super sick and you're like, oh, should I take a rest day? You should probably take a rest day if you're really sick. Okay. Now, my biggest thing here is keeping the promises that you make to yourself, because one of the reasons why people continue to like stay stuck and continue to feel like they're always failing at this journey is because they keep breaking promises that they make to themselves. They make a promise that they're going to get up at 6 a.m. before work and work out. And then they break that promise, and then they feel like they can't do this. It's not for them. They lose confidence and beliefs in themselves. So I say keep the promises that you make to yourself. Maybe it's not going to be the best workout of your life, but if you told yourself that you were going to work out today, and then you could take a rest day tomorrow if you really need one. So do you truly need a rest day, or are you just making excuses? And I think that's something that you really need to be aware of and really be honest with yourself. That's kind of where my head is regarding this question. But Eric, what do you got?
Yeah, for me personally, it's definitely something that I believe that we can still make gain on those quote unquote rest days, active recovery days. Because to me, sitting around and not doing anything all day, like, yeah, it feels good. But usually the next day when I head to the gym, I feel typically worse than if I get up and move for an hour. So like yesterday, all of us coaches had one of our coaches meetings, and I was literally in the middle of doing my active recovery during it, knowing that I can listen into what we were talking about and it wasn't going to be a big deal. But like I set a clock in my garage for an hour and I just moved. I picked movements that helped me move in big ranges of motion, worked on my troubled areas, and I kept things super low intensity. Like I don't even think I ended up getting into any kind of like zone 2 area. So I won't pick on anybody, but I'm gonna use Jennifer as an example because she's out on a walk right now. Like if today was quote unquote Jennifer's active recovery day, she's out there walking. Walking's great, but how could she further that active recovery? Like, oh, hey, I'm going to stop every 5 minutes and I'm going to do some slow moving air squats or something like that to help move my hips, my knees, my ankles in bigger ranges of motion to allow my legs to feel better going into the next day. And then the next 5 minutes, hey, I'm going to stop and do some super slow controlled push-ups to help my upper body feel a little bit better heading into that next day. You know, little things like that. Not only are we pushing the needle forward a little bit more, but she's also setting herself up the next day to feel better going into that. So it could be even on that walk, you stop and like, hey, I'm going to sit in the bottom of my squat for 1 minute because I need to work on my squat mobility side of things. So I'm going to sit there, stretch for a minute, stand back up, continue my walk. The next one, hey, I'm going to spend 30 seconds in a big runner stretch on each leg, 2 different times. And I'm going to get up and I'm going to keep walking. So those active recovery days and rest days, I think are great. But like Caitlin said, guys, if we're sick, you're pushing the needle backwards if you're heading to the gym or you're, trying to do things like that. Like we all understand that, like, we have to work out to drive results. Like once things are done between the ears, once food's all set up and ready for us to go, we're making that progress with that. Unfortunately, it comes down to, hey, I have to move to lose. All right. So movement is that medicine as well, too, is how I like to tell people as well. Like, hey, if we're like feeling super good, probably try moving around a little bit more on that active recovery day other than just a walk, like jumping jacks and air squats and slow push-ups. And, even something like, hey, Jennifer, like, hey, let's walk backwards for a minute while we're on that walk because we can challenge our knees, and it's like some knees over toe stuff and things like that. We're all really good things to add into that active recovery side of days.
Yeah, I love active recovery because, again, I'm like similar to Eric. I just don't feel as good when I go into the gym not moving for an entire day. So Austin, also, let's address this real quick. Eric, where would you put interval training?
Elaborate on that a little bit more, Austin. Like, where do you mean, like, as through like a training week? Because I'm a massive believer in interval training because it allows you to train at a higher threshold than you're actually capable of. So we'll put it in the terms of something that, I think everyone can understand. Like, hey, if I want to go out and I want to PR my 5K, and all of my training just alludes to me running 5K as fast as I can every single day. Well, you're only capable of running a certain pace for a certain amount of time before things start to drop off. Whereas like, hey, today I'm going to do 2 miles of intervals and I'm going to run 400-meter repeats, but they have to be faster than my threshold pace. And then I'm going to rest and recover to make sure I can hit that threshold pace. So if I train above my threshold pace for X amount of time, the next time I go to run 5K, I will be able to run faster than I was previously because I now have actual training stimulus at that higher threshold pace. So I'm a big believer in interval training as far as like how it makes me feel and how it makes me, go. So yeah, Austin, I love that. 40 seconds run, 20 seconds walk for 45 minutes. That's a great interval piece out of there. And like on that run, like Austin's adding weight to himself to make it harder. So the next time maybe he does that same run interval and he takes the vest off and all of a sudden Austin's able to run at, half a mile an hour faster than he was previously ever before. And he has that training stimulus of that. So if you guys are on that steady state train, so like, oh, hey, I go out, every Saturday is like my long run day because I'm training for a long run or something. Like, hey, how long are we going out there? We're going to be out there for an hour. So maybe let's try to go interval style training. I'm going to run for 2 minutes. I'm going to walk for a minute, and I'm going to go out for half an hour. I have to try to make that same distance on the way back. So I think interval training like that is extremely beneficial for, people trying to push that needle forward a little bit as well too. So intensity drives results.
Mm-hmm. Facts. I like that. Good question, Austin. Next question, number 5. I know I need to cut back on carbs, but I'm not sure if I should put it into fat or protein because even too much protein can be a problem for me as well. So little bit of context. I wish I had more context, to this question, because the first question I would have to this person, like a follow-up, is why do you feel like you need to eat less carbs? Is it because you actually need to eat less carbs, or is it more of a mindset shift where it's like, oh, carbs are bad? Because I know that we've all been there, and some of us are still there, where we have this mentality that carbs are bad, when it's not overconsumption of a particular macro, it's overconsumption of calories as a whole, and usually coupled with underconsumption of protein. That is the problem, not carbs. Carbs are awesome. Now, carbs are going to be fuel, and fats are going to be fuel. So if you need to eat less carbs, ideally you would put it towards fat, since that's another fuel source, unless you're not hitting your protein goal. Then you would hit your protein goal, and you want that to be around 1 gram per pound of your body weight. However, if you mean that you need to eat less carbs because you're trying to lose body fat, you want to focus, like I said, on hitting protein and calories first, worrying less about where the carbs and the fats lies, because most people can see phenomenal results just hitting protein and calories. Those are the two biggest things that are really going to drive the results when it comes to nutrition. Eric, what do you have to add to that one on carbs?
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in carbs, and carbs are good. And I understand that most of us grew up through a time frame of where carbs are absolutely the enemy. I've had conversations with clients that I have in person that freak out when they go to use the post-workout stack, and like, it's so much sugar. I'm like, it's different. And I'll explain it to them. They're like, oh, okay. And then 2 weeks later, I have the same conversation with them again. Like if we have a big fear of something like that, not only do you need to have that conversation with your coach, but then you have to find ways to actually implement those carbs into your diet, guys. Carbs are going to be one of the primary fuel sources for your brain to function properly as well, too. So, glucose is the first fuel source for your brain. So we have to have them for us to cognitively work as well as we possibly can. But also, if we are afraid of carbs, like, hey, talk to your coach about maybe timing some carbohydrates around your training sessions. Now, as anybody who saw my story yesterday, your walk's not a workout. All right. If we do some other things while we're in there, we can have a different conversation. But if you're heading to the gym, like, hey, I'm really terrified of having, look at my macros, and all of a sudden coach is like, you get 200 grams of carbs. And you're like, whoa, pump the brakes. All right, let's put in 200 grams of carbs into just like a visual perspective for you guys. It's roughly 8 slices of bread. It's really not a whole lot in there. So if we're terrified of having that much, like, hey, how can I time that around my day so that it's driving my needle forward? So if I need carbs pre-training and post-training, and then outside of that, I kind of get scared of that. It's like, hey, I'm going to have all my carbs pre-workout, then all my carbs post-workout to fuel myself for my training session, and then to recover from my training session. So the carbs with your post-workout shake, all right, would be added into your daily total. So like that next post-workout meal could possibly even have less carbs in there. So we fueled, we've trained, and we're driving the recovery needle past that. So outside of that, if your day is relatively sedentary, you don't really need carbs throughout the rest of the day. So you could live off, your fats, your proteins, and vegetables side of things. So, but of course, like if you're having vegetables, things like carrots, potatoes, root vegetables, all are high in carbs as well too. So you have to make sure you're picking things that are actually going to keep pushing that needle forward on that too. So if you're somebody who's afraid of it, it's like, hey, talk to your coach about timing it around your training session so you can kind of deal with that mental struggle a little bit easier.
Yeah, that definitely makes it mentally easier for people to add in more carbohydrate, but also think about how your performance is going to improve if you're having more carbohydrates before your training session. You're going to have better workouts, which is going to reflect in your results. And then going off of like having carbs after your workout, you're going to recover better, which again, better results. So if you're having more carbohydrates surrounding your training, not only will it help mentally, but it also literally help you earn better results in the long run. So I like that question a lot, because I feel like so many people have been or are currently in a space where they almost fear those carbs, but carbs literally, like Eric said, the fuel source for your brain, but also the fuel source for your training. So remember that, guys. Now, question number 6, we got 2 more. All right. Just more ideas of how to get protein and calories, especially when I'm high stress or super busy. And this kind of goes off of a couple of the questions that we had before, like asking about protein and protein snacks, and also talking about like, hey, what do I do when I'm overwhelmed and busy? Guys, it goes back to pre-tracking for me. Like pre-tracking, no problems, only solutions. Like if you're high stress and busy, there's a way for you to still hit your macros always, because you can always control the food that you put in your mouth. You can always control that. I don't care. Nobody's shoving Oreos down your face. So it just takes a little bit more planning. So like if you know that you have a hectic or a stressful day coming up, or you know that life is generally a little bit more crazy during the weeks, then you have to take a little bit of time the day before, or even like for the entire week, and just pre-track things and have a plan. I like to say there's no difference between days that are hectic and not hectic. There's just a difference between how much you need to plan going into those days. So if you also find yourself like you don't always have to go to the fast food drive-through, if you're pressed for time, you can go to the grocery store and you can grab some better options that are easier for you to manage with your nutrition. Like you can go into the deli counter and you can get some deli meat. You can grab like a couple slices of bread or like a roll or something and make a sandwich that's going to be way better for you than something that you would get at like McDonald's or something like that, or rotisserie chicken and like a microwavable bag of rice, depending on how much time you have. Those things are super easy. What do you got, Eric?
Yeah, so I'm going to play mean coach right now, guys. Love you guys to death, but you made a choice to make an investment into yourself. All right. At the end of the day, that if you're having a high stress day or a super busy day, you still made the choice to invest into yourself. Super, super old cliche saying, we've all heard it how many different times, but if your cup's not full, how do you expect to pour into anybody else's without being irritable and being an a-hole to somebody else, right? So you have to fill up your cup. The decision to eat the right food is on you. If you know you're about to have a heavy stress day, or a stress day just starts to build on you, and you don't tell your coach, and your coach has no idea what you're going through, how do you expect your coach to help you through that day, to give you those ideas that maybe are fleeing your mind because there's some type of personal fire that you're trying to put out? That's what your guys' coach is for. You must communicate with us when those things happen so we can rewire things, put things back into perspective. Like, hey, you're still in control. Take a big, deep breath. What is in your control right now? What's not in your control right now? Reframe things, get that 30,000 foot view. But again, guys, like, you've made the decision. You're in control, whether you think it or not. So, you know, sometimes people don't like that side of coaching, but hey, it's part of it. Like, hey, you have to take care of yourself first. You have to learn how to be a little bit selfish to become more selfless, right? If my cup's full, I can give a whole lot more to everybody else. So stress is stress, whether all of a sudden Jennifer starts getting chased by a bear, all right? Or she's stressed because, oh shit, I forgot to pay my insurance payment on my vehicle. It's past due. I got a cancellation notice. I need to get on the phone with my insurance agent to make sure I don't lose my coverage. Like, your body represents that the same. All right. So just make sure that you're taking care of those things. Communicate with your coach. Like, hey, coach, I'm having a super stressed day. I think I'm going to miss a meal. What's an option that I have? Or I have X, Y, and Z in my house. What's a quick meal option that I can get? You know, little things like that with your coach. Not only are you going to develop a better coach-client relationship, we're also going to start learning more. Like, guys, you bought a coach. We're here for you. Door of communication is always open. If you text your coach and they're busy and they don't get back to you super quick enough, guess what? You have the rest of the coaching staff. You have the Facebook group that you can use. You have the Reach Your Peak group that you can use. Message somebody. Like, my door of communication is open. If you guys need something, shoot me a DM on Instagram or on Facebook. Or if you have my number, use my number. Or if you're in my Telegram chat, use the Telegram chat, not only in the step challenge, but in like the 90-day challenge and things like that, guys. If you just at me, like, I'll answer the question as soon as I possibly can. So, but yeah, like, you're in control, and unfortunately you made the choice to make the investment into yourself. So choose that over the stress. You have to put yourself first, and it's okay to, you're not being mean. You're not being selfish to anybody else in your life. But again, like, you can't give if you don't have anything to give.
Facts. Yeah, no, guys, definitely take advantage of all the resources that you have. There's nothing frustrates me more than getting on a call with a client and then telling me that they had a stressful week, but this is the first time that I'm hearing of it. We probably could have squashed this days ago if you told me right up front. So make sure you're communicating with your coach, and like Eric said, taking advantage of all the groups that you guys are a part of. They're there for a reason. You have so much community around you to help you during these stressful times if you need it, but also just keep the promises that you make to yourself. All right. So the final question, and we already touched on this question on our Q&A last Wednesday, but we'll address it again. So foods that help to fight inflammation. So again, addressed it on the last Q&A. We're going to touch on it briefly. Biggest thing that I recommend, take out the foods that are causing inflammation. So like highly processed foods, let's take out those foods, and fast foods, or at least minimize them so that they're not like the majority of your diet, because that's where a lot of those omega-6s, which are causing a lot of inflammation in your life, are coming from. So highly processed foods, seed oils, things that have ingredients that you cannot read on the back, probably should avoid them. And then replace those foods with more whole natural foods, lean protein sources, animal proteins, fruits, veggies, minimal ingredient carbs like rice, potatoes, things that are higher in omega-3s like fatty fish, like grass-fed meats, and high in antioxidants like fruits and vegetables, and using lots of color with your produce to get a variety of those antioxidants and nutrients. But Eric, what do you have on reducing inflammation with your food?
Yeah, so there's 3 different things I'll touch on. The first one being like, hey, like Caitlin just said, we have to get in antioxidants. So what does that look like? That's our reds, that's our purples, that's our blues on the berry side of things to help with the oxidative stress and being able to help fight free radicals. Outside of that, spinach is a natural anti-inflammatory as well too. I know everyone loves their leafy greens. You can toss it in a salad to make it better. Then it's not just iceberg, which is just crunchy water. All right. If you can handle it, tossing it in a breakfast omelet, or I even like to dice it up and just toss it in my rice and salt, lime on top of it and things like that. So almost like cilantro rice, but just without the cilantro. So if you're that person that it tastes like soap to you, now you have a different option. You get in some micronutrients as well with that too. And then pineapple as well too. Those are big 3 things that I have in my diet that are huge staples, because I am not a fan of taking anti-inflammatories and stuff like that unless something is truly bothering me. That is my absolute last resort that I will go to. So if I have something starting to bother me, I make sure to pump up those 3 different things. So berries and the red, blue, purples. I'll up my spinach intake, where I'll probably have 100 grams with every single meal that I have, just 100 grams of fresh spinach. And then I try to account for at least a serving of pineapple across all my meals as well too, just to help with some of that. So those are some natural remedies. Now, of course, like if you have something major going on, unfortunately, there's no way to outwork the way medication does. So just make sure that you choose something that doesn't, mess your stomach up as much. Like I can't really handle ibuprofen too much because it just absolutely destroys my stomach. So I have to use things like liquid, the liquid Advil gels and things like that for myself, or I'll try to use a topical ointment on there as well too. So, but yeah, food wise, those are the 3 things that I would go for: berries, spinach, and pineapple.
Nice. I like that. Good deal. Well, guys, those are all the questions that we got submitted. So does anybody have any questions that have come up while we've been talking, or that you came here with that you want to discuss right now? Because you have us. So what questions do we have? Anything?
So I have a question. I'm signed up to do another 5K next month. I've already been training for it. And Sunday, I'm just following the First Form app, and I was supposed to just run an entire 5K. I decided to do it at the gym to make it easier. And to my surprise, I actually was able to run the entire time. However, I was dealing with just side cramps, especially like the last 10th of a mile. They came on with like a vengeance, and I'm like, you're not stopping now. But do I just need more electrolytes? How soon should I take in electrolytes before I start my race when race day comes? Or should I have eaten more carbs beforehand? Is there anything that I can do to prevent that?
To me, side stitches are like from your intercostal muscles inside your rib cage and things like that. And sometimes they can just spasm and cramp as well too, just from like if we're running, you find yourself like kind of like leaning to a side because you got the struggle breathing and stuff going on. So a lot of that, I mean, you're talking like little bitty tiny muscles. So if like your big muscle drivers weren't having any kind of cramping sensation and things like that, electrolytes at that certain given time aren't going to take that away immediately anyways. So just make sure you're controlling your breathing and things like that too. So I'd say like pre-warm up, like make sure your warm up is good and aggressive. You're only breathing in and out of your nose. So you have an expansion, contraction of that intercostal. You get your diaphragm working better for yourself as well too. But yeah, in the moment, unfortunately, most of your side stitches are something we just kind of have to deal with. There's nothing like other than stopping and stretching and like trying to open that area up. But if you're in the middle of a race, I mean, that's just time lost. So in that moment, there's nothing to alleviate it quickly. Now, pre-race, like a 5K, I wouldn't suggest anybody like hanging on to a 20-ounce bottle in a 5K, because realistically, you're going to have enough fuel free to last you through that 5K. But yeah, I would definitely say like whatever you're taking for your pre-workout, your salts, your electrolytes, your carbs in your pre-training shake or your pre-race shake, 30 minutes to 45 minutes beforehand. Make sure you have enough time in case, the pre-jitters, bathroom break happens, that you have enough time to make sure you take care of yourself and that you're ready to go on your run and things like that. So yeah, 30 to 45 minutes before. And that's what I would suggest. But like inside of a 5K, it's just not a whole lot of time to get in extra fueling that's actually going to be able to be utilized, especially if we've never trained like that before. It's something that I recently learned about probably within the last years, like training your stomach to actually be able to absorb nutrients while you're in a training state, guys. Because if you ever notice that like, oh, I kind of have to go pee, and then you start working out and then like you just kind of forget about it because your body's kind of shut off that part of the body because it's not worried about it. And then all of a sudden, like you're in the middle of a 5K training on a treadmill, you're out on a run and you're carrying something, you drink something. A lot of people can deal with a lot of like stomach issues because your body's not used to getting fuel 10 minutes into a race, 15 minutes into a race, and all of a sudden your body's trying to break down carbs and salts and electrolytes and things like that. Your body kind of freaks like, whoa, we've never done this. So I definitely suggest like, hey, on some of those longer run days, start playing around with fueling just to see how it feels. But realistically, in a 5K, you're better off loading yourself with what you need getting into your race than just focusing on one foot in the front of the other, your rhythmic pattern breathing and staying in control and pushing yourself on your run, rather than carrying extra weight of a bottle or carrying extra weight of like the little fanny packs that have the water bottles in it too, because that's just extra weight that you're carrying for a race.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I would say too. As far as especially with 5K, but there are reasons why we get cramps. A lot of it could be dehydration, overhydration. Usually, it's not overhydration for most people, unless you literally chugged like a crap ton of water before you went out on your run. You're just like sloshing around in your stomach. But another thing could be just like breathing. So if you're not getting oxygen to your muscles, they're going to cramp. So make sure you just have a good rhythmic breathing pattern. You stretch enough, and then you do get in a little bit of electrolytes before the race, like Eric was saying with like your pre-race shake.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Again, if you want to have access to Q&As that we do bi-weekly in the Hidden Summit Facebook group, go down to the show notes, join the free Facebook community. Thank you guys for listening. If you found value from it, please share it with at least one person, share it on your social media, and go out and do one thing that's going to take you one step closer to where you want to be.